They said Crimea was impossible to challenge. They said it was untouchable. They said Ukraine could never change the reality. But something unexpected is happening right now. Old assumptions are collapsing fast. Power balances are shifting quietly, and the world is starting to notice. Today, we break down why Crimea is no longer what it once was, and why many experts now admit they were wrong. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are discussing a topic that many people once believed was settled forever. For years, Crimea was described as untouchable, unchangeable, and permanently out of reach for Ukraine. Analysts, politicians, and military experts repeatedly said the situation would never shift. That belief became so common that it turned into accepted truth. But history often proves that long-held assumptions can collapse faster than expected. What we are witnessing now is not a single dramatic event, but a series of developments that together are rewriting the narrative around Crimea. Ukraine has not relied on one action or one announcement. Instead, it has applied pressure across multiple fronts, slowly challenging the idea that Crimea was completely secure. These changes are subtle, but they are powerful. Logistics have been disrupted. Confidence has been shaken, and the sense of permanence that once surrounded Crimea is fading. This does not mean everything changes overnight. It means the situation is no longer frozen in time. The discussion has shifted from never possible to how far can this go? That shift alone is historic. In this video, we will break down what changed, why experts were wrong, and how this moment fits into the bigger picture. Stay with us as we carefully explain the signals, the strategies, and the global reaction shaping this new reality. For a long time, Crimea was seen as a fortress. Geography played a major role in this perception. Surrounded by water and heavily defended, the region appeared naturally protected. Russia invested years into reinforcing this image. Military bases were expanded. Supply routes were secured. Air defenses were showcased publicly. All of this created a psychological barrier as strong as the physical one. Many observers concluded that challenging Crimea directly would be too costly and too risky. Ukraine, according to this view, lacked the tools and reach to make any meaningful impact. This belief spread widely in global media and policy circles. Over time, repetition turned it into certainty. However, modern conflicts do not rely only on traditional front lines. Control today depends on logistics, information, and sustained pressure. Ukraine understood this reality early. Instead of focusing on symbolic victories, it focused on weakening systems. Every system, no matter how strong, depends on movement, coordination, and morale. Once those elements are strained, even fortified regions become vulnerable. Crimea's perceived untouchability was based on outdated assumptions. Those assumptions ignored how warfare has evolved. The idea of an unbreakable stronghold no longer fits a world shaped by precision, intelligence, and long-term strategy. This mismatch between belief and reality is now becoming visible. And once belief breaks, strategic calculations change rapidly. One of the most important changes has been the pressure on supply and connectivity. Crimea does not exist in isolation. It depends on steady movement of fuel, equipment, and personnel. When those flows are disrupted, control consumes more effort and resources. Ukraine focused carefully on this reality. Instead of dramatic announcements, it applied consistent pressure that forced constant adjustment. Each disruption created delays. Each delay increased costs. Over time, these costs accumulated. What once seemed stable became increasingly fragile. This approach avoids large confrontations while still producing results. It forces the opposing side to defend everywhere, all the time. That kind of defense is exhausting. It drains attention and resources. It also creates uncertainty. Uncertainty is dangerous because it spreads faster than physical damage. Commanders begin to question assumptions. Planners must prepare for scenarios once dismissed. Even civilians feel the change when routines are interrupted. This is how control slowly weakens. Not through one decisive moment, but through sustained strain. The idea that Crimea was untouchable depended on the assumption that nothing significant could reach it. That assumption is no longer valid. When reach expands, immunity disappears. Ukraine's actions have demonstrated that influence does not require permanent presence. It requires the ability to affect decisions. And that ability is now clearly visible. Another critical factor is perception. Power is not only measured by territory, but by confidence. For years, Crimea symbolized permanence. That symbolism mattered. It reassured supporters and discouraged challengers. Ukraine targeted this psychological dimension carefully. By demonstrating reach and persistence, it challenged the image of total control. Once that image cracks, reactions change. Media narratives shift. International discussions evolve. Allies reassess what is possible. Opponents reconsider what is secure. This is not accidental. Strategic communication plays a major role in modern conflict. Silence, timing, and selective visibility can be more effective than loud declarations. Ukraine allowed results to speak without exaggeration. That approach increased credibility. When observers saw repeated signs of pressure, skepticism turned into attention. Attention then turned into serious analysis. Analysts who once dismissed any change began revising their assessments. This gradual shift matters more than headlines. It shapes policy choices and long-term planning. The moment experts admit they were wrong, the conversation changes permanently. Crimea is no longer discussed as a closed chapter. It is discussed as an evolving situation. That change alone proves the original claim of untouchability was flawed. Control that depends on belief is vulnerable once belief fades. International reactions further confirm this shift. Governments that once avoided detailed discussion of Crimea now speak more openly about its future. This does not mean immediate consensus. It means the topic is back on the table. Diplomatic language has become more cautious and more conditional. Words like permanent and settled appear less frequently. That change reflects reality. Decision makers respond to momentum, not wishes. When momentum changes, positions adjust. Ukraine's strategy created momentum without forcing dramatic escalation. That balance is important. It allows continued support without triggering fatigue or backlash. Partners see progress as manageable and meaningful. This strengthens long-term commitment. At the same time, it complicates planning for those defending Crimea. They must now account for scenarios once ignored. That increases uncertainty and cost. Over time, these pressures compound. No system can absorb unlimited strain without consequence. The belief that Crimea was untouchable relied on a static view of power. But power is dynamic. It shifts with technology, alliances, and strategy. Ukraine demonstrated adaptability. That adaptability is now recognized globally. Recognition itself is a form of influence. It validates effort and encourages further innovation. The original claim of impossibility did not survive contact with reality. It is important to be clear about what this moment represents. This is not about instant outcomes. It is about trajectories. Trajectories determine futures. Crimea's trajectory is no longer fixed. That is the real change. Ukraine's actions showed that persistence can reshape expectations. Expectations guide decisions. When expectations shift, strategies follow. This is why early dismissals were dangerous. They underestimated adaptability. They assumed limitations would remain permanent. History rarely supports such assumptions. Every major conflict shows that innovation alters balance over time. Ukraine invested in learning and adjustment. Mistakes were studied. Successes were refined. This process created a feedback loop. Each step made the next more effective. Observers who focus only on visible outcomes miss this deeper process. Control weakens long before it disappears. The signs are often indirect. Increased defensive measures, tighter information control, heightened alertness. These are not signs of confidence. They are signs of concern. Crimea now shows these signs. That alone disproves the idea of untouchability. A truly untouchable position does not require constant reassurance. The current situation does. That reality explains why experts are reassessing their earlier claims. The situation changed because Ukraine changed how it approached the challenge. Media narratives also play a role in shaping understanding. Early coverage often relied on official statements and inherited assumptions. Over time, evidence forced adjustment. Reporting became more nuanced. Language softened. Certainty gave way to analysis. This evolution matters because public perception influences political space. When audiences accept that change is possible, leaders gain flexibility. Ukraine benefited from this shift. Its actions aligned with emerging narratives instead of contradicting them. That alignment increased trust. Trust increases patience. Patience supports long-term strategies. Crimea's story is now framed as part of an ongoing process, not a finished outcome. This framing opens space for discussion and planning. It also reduces the shock factor of future developments. When people expect change, they are less destabilized by it. This psychological preparation is valuable. It reduces resistance and confusion. Ukraine's approach combined physical pressure with narrative management. Neither alone would be sufficient. Together, they create momentum. The original claim that Crimea was untouchable failed to account for this combined approach. It assumed a single dimension of power. Modern conflicts operate across many dimensions simultaneously. Ignoring that complexity leads to incorrect conclusions. Those conclusions are now being corrected publicly. Economic and logistical considerations further weaken the old narrative. Maintaining control over Crimea requires continuous investment. Infrastructure, security, and administration all carry costs. When pressure increases, those costs rise. At some point, returns diminish. Ukraine's strategy increases the cost of control without matching escalation. This asymmetry matters. It shifts the balance over time. Resources diverted to defense are resources unavailable elsewhere. This creates opportunity costs. Decision makers must prioritize. Prioritization reveals vulnerabilities. Crimea's defense now competes with other needs. That competition did not exist when the region was considered fully secure. The change is subtle but significant. It signals that control is no longer effortless. Effort implies vulnerability. Vulnerability invites further pressure. This cycle explains why the situation continues to evolve. Ukraine does not need immediate breakthroughs. It needs sustained imbalance. That imbalance is now visible. Analysts tracking costs and adjustments can see the trend. These trends support the conclusion that earlier certainty was misplaced. The region is no longer insulated from broader dynamics. It is integrated into them. Integration means exposure. Exposure means influence. That influence disproves the claim of untouchability at its core. Looking ahead, the most important lesson is humility. Predictions based on permanence often fail. Crimea's case illustrates this clearly. What seemed impossible became plausible. What was dismissed became debated. Ukraine did not rely on miracles. It relied on consistency. Consistency compounds over time. Each small success builds confidence and capability. Each adjustment improves effectiveness. Observers who focus only on dramatic moments miss this cumulative effect. The situation today is the result of years of learning and pressure. It did not appear suddenly. Recognizing this helps explain why expert opinions are changing now. Evidence accumulated beyond denial. Once that threshold is crossed, reassessment becomes inevitable. This does not guarantee specific outcomes. It guarantees uncertainty. Uncertainty is the opposite of untouchability. The original claim promised certainty. Reality delivered complexity. Complexity favors those willing to adapt. Ukraine demonstrated adaptation repeatedly. That demonstration matters more than slogans. It reshapes how future scenarios are evaluated. Crimea is now discussed with conditional language. That alone marks a historic shift. The claim that Ukraine proved critics wrong is not about victory declarations. It is about breaking an assumption. Breaking assumptions changes everything. In conclusion, the idea that Crimea was untouchable did not survive sustained pressure and adaptation. Ukraine proved that evenly entrenched beliefs can be challenged. This does not mean the story is over. It means the story is open. An open story invites analysis, planning, and debate. That openness is itself a strategic achievement. It forces all sides to reconsider timelines and options. For years, discussion was limited by certainty. That limitation is gone. Today, Crimea represents change rather than permanence. That shift affects diplomacy, security planning, and public perception. It also serves as a reminder that conflict outcomes are shaped over time, not decided by declarations. Ukraine's approach shows how patience and innovation can alter realities once considered fixed. Experts who claimed impossibility underestimated this process. Their reassessment confirms the transformation. As viewers, understanding this helps cut through noise and exaggeration. It allows clear evaluation of events as they unfold. If you found this breakdown useful, remember to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for clear, calm, and in-depth analysis. Stay informed, stay curious, and we will see you in the next video.